back with a very special guest, American McGee, of lately Plushie Dreadfuls. Now, as anybody that tunes in will know, we've had Jen on here a couple times, largely the chief designer, but we got the man himself. So, welcome to the show. I'm Evan,
Thank-
at that fake guy Dan, and that's American McGee.
Hey, thanks, Evan slash that fake guy Dan for having me on, and interested to talk to you about what we're doing at Plushie Dreadfuls.
An absolute pleasure. So, the for anybody that's not familiar, like I said, we've had Jen on a few times, and we've talked about this. So, basically, a plushie dreadful is any given plushie, but largely super premium. The highest level of product or highest level materials, and they all go for a standard price. So you might get a little bit more in one, a little bit less than the other, but either way, you're always getting a pretty nice plushie. So where'd it
Yeah,
come
there.
from?
Well, it started with my Alice series of games. I think a lot of people who follow Plushie Dreadfuls on our socials, they are sometimes shocked to find that the guy behind the Alice series also happens to be the guy behind the Plushie Dreadfuls. But it was the White Rabbit plush toy seen in the very first Alice game, which, that was released back in 2000. So we're talking going on 25 years ago. In the opening scene of the first Alice game, you see Alice clutching a plush white rabbit. And that plush white rabbit from 25 years ago is what was the initial inspiration for, hey, why don't we make a plush white rabbit inspired by the one you see her clutching in the game? So if you go into the shop right now, you'll find there is a what we call distressed white rabbit. It was done in a similar style for IP copyright
Of course.
legal reasons. Obviously, we don't claim that it's the same rabbit, but we will say it's inspired by. And then from there, what we saw was that we would put these rabbits into the e-commerce site that my wife and I had set up called Mysterious, and they would sell out very quickly. And so we knew immediately we were onto something. But then, because the audience from the Alice games was the initial audience, and a lot of them have an interest in the themes contained in those games, which is childhood trauma and healing and PTSD and psychology, we started getting requests for the follow-up rabbits to have more connection with those themes. And so we went from initial designs focused on things like love. We did a love rabbit, to exploring more emotions. We did an angry rabbit. But then we started getting these requests from people for rabbits to symbolize or support or bring awareness to more and more diverse mental health issues, physical health issues, and just other themes that, yeah, we didn't have in mind when the brand started up. But these days, we cater to a huge range of rare diseases, mental issues. We also delve into the LGBT community, and so the brand has just exploded and expanded from that first Alice inspired rabbit.
Now, real quickly, I guess we could do a kind of a step to the side and talk about something that I was personally interested in that didn't actually go anywhere, and that was I can't remember his name, the cat. Uh,
Sticky bumps, is that what you're talking about?
yes, that protects animals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I often joke with Jennifer that my instincts on what will sell or won't sell are very broken. And that's a funny thing for somebody who you and probably many of the fans view as a creative guy, right? Whose job or supposed skill set would involve coming up with ideas, and that those ideas would be marketable and successful. And but one of the things we've noticed with the Plushy Dreadfuls is that whenever I think that a plush design isn't going to work, it's not going to take off, or it's not going to resonate with people, or maybe it'll upset people more than it'll attract them, I'm wrong. And then
Huh.
the same is true in reverse. Like Scruffy Bumps, for example, was one where I was certain that, hey, everybody hates the idea of animal abuse. Everybody would love a mascot for anti-animal abuse, or for, in a sort of Stephen King style revenge animal that goes after animal abusers. I thought this ought to work just great.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Turns
I
out
thought
that
so too.
yeah, well, it turns out it just didn't sell that well. And, that's the ultimate indicator of whether something's being successful or not for us, is if it sells and if it resonates. And it was funny because I got out in front of it on my own and thought, well, let's pour some marketing into this. Let's do a cute little theme song and a, animated video. We got a guy to come on board and do that, who's done some really excellent work for us in the past. I thought he knocked it out of the ballpark with this jingle and the video. Just
Totally
absolutely
agree.
amazing. Yeah. Tom Resnick is his name.
Oh
And
really? I actually know who that
he
is.
does, okay. Yeah, he does fantastic work. And it's funny because I've worked with him a number of times over the years. Um, but he and I just we kind of bounce in and out of each other's orbits from time to time, and we'll do something. And it's amazing. Like the work he did, the song he did, I almost felt like that trailer and the song by itself might have been enough that somebody at, Cartoon Network or at one of these, horror feature film production companies might have seen it and gone, holy shit, this is awesome. Let's make a
What a
Scruffy
cool
Bumps movie.
property. Let's do something with this.
Yeah, but it just didn't take off. And so we made lots and lots of the toys, and we normally produce in batches of say 1,000 toys at a time.
Sure.
And so with Scruffy Bumps, I think we made 2,000 to start with, which was unusual because we just thought like, well, we've put all this energy into marketing it, and it's going to take off. Man, it was lucky if we were selling like one or two of them per day.
Oh, goodness.
And so it just didn't resonate. And it's funny because a lot of times when these things don't resonate, and then once they've sold out, we get a bunch of people writing in going, "Oh, I missed the chance to get it," and you think like, "Well, where were you when it was an actual thing?" But that idea, though, the notion that I have to say to myself often that I don't really know what's going to be successful or not, that is in fact what is the impetus for, or the inspiration behind this notion we have of crowd design. And yeah, maybe that's something we can talk about a little later in the interview.
Sure, sure. So, I guess the next one to hit on, since we're on the whole cat topic and everything, and I've got a bit of my own segue. I'm personally working on a Victorian era London project, more of a creative writing kind of thing, a role playing game supplement slash setting. But I've noticed that you've started a Victorian line as well, starting with a Victorian interpretation of the Cheshire Cat.
Yeah, I think most people know the sort of journey we went through with the Alice property, and the fact that myself and the team put a lot of effort into trying to get a third game going, and for their own reasons, and I'm sure perfectly valid, EA decided that that wasn't a path that they wanted to go down. But then, of course, I'm continually peppered with questions and requests related to Alice, and especially as a public domain property, one of the most.
Oh, I lost you for a moment there. You said
Thing.
Public domain property. What was that?
Well, it just that it's a public domain property, so why don't you just run off and do your own thing with it? And that's a fair enough question, but it really is one that if you were to go, or if I were to go into the game space and try to create another Alice game, would really be an invitation for a lot of trouble from EA, potentially from Disney, from a lot of other people out there who might have claims to the game space, and not just the EA version, but any other version. And I'm not interested in getting tangled up in all that. But in the plush toy space, there's nothing really that says that, I should be that worried about going off and making a plush toy reinterpretation of the public domain materials. And that's what we've decided to do.
No, certainly not. And I gotta say, I like the design language in this. You've got the button eyes are excellent. It's such a throwback to your classic kids toy. But then, the whole thing's actually really well made. But the what should I say? I like the decisions you've made on the fabrics because it has sort of the appearance of oldness without actually being, worn.
Mm. Yeah, the idea is, and we've stated this over on the social media channels when we put this stuff up for crowd design. The idea is that if I had access to a time machine and traveled back to the Victorian era and opened up a plush toy shop, then what might the products in that shop look like? And that's where the notion of Victorian McGee's fill in the blank comes into play. So it could be that over time, we develop a line based on Alice in Wonderland, but then we also start to approach and develop lines based on other well-known fairy tales, or other stories that would have been relevant in that era. But at the beginning here, the focus is on doing a couple of toys based on the public domain Alice in Wonderland characters. So we've got the Cheshire Cat. We also recently put up a White Rabbit design that I think looks pretty cool.
I agree. Yeah,
And
very stylish. I like the hat.
yeah, and so we may do, the Dormouse, we may do a Mad Hatter, we may do a Jabberwocky. It all depends on what the customers are asking for. But certainly we've seen plenty of people posting up requests, and so we'll see which one gets the most attention, and then we'll pursue that.
That seems perfectly fair to me. Uh, so, have you got anything specific planned next, at least for that specific line?
Right now, we haven't made any decisions. We're just focusing on the Cheshire Cat and the White Rabbit.
Okay.
I'd say one of the reasons is that those are sort of the low-hanging fruit. They're relatively easy to conceptualize and easy to produce. But if you think about what a Jabberwock in a Victorian toy style might look like, that's going to be a bit more of a complex design. And so we're not going and running straight towards that just yet. I think it's a lot easier for us to establish the style for this particular segment of the brand on things like the cat and the rabbit, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I get you there. Kind of get your language down, so you know how to speak that way as you move forward.
Exactly.
Okay, okay. So, what? Oh, I can't remember the last one I saw you working on. It had the broken heart, I believe. What's the current mental health plushie dreadful that you're working on?
That's a complicated question. We currently have quite a few.
What's on the front
Uh,
burner?
different, I don't know the answer to the question when it's posed that way exactly. I
Okay,
can
well,
tell you because
what's
if you
interesting to
look at our
you right
lineup,
now?
right? I'll just let you know if you look at our lineup right now,
Hmm.
we currently have around 100 requests that we've put up onto the site. We finally had to just say like, okay, all these requests keep flooding in, but we're having a really difficult time keeping track of them. So we'll start putting them into the website in a to be designed format. So they've just got the question mark on the rabbit. And that way, at least we can say to people, hey, you've come here and you've requested cyclical vomiting multiple times. I
Sure.
didn't know that was a thing, but apparently that's a thing, and somebody wants a rabbit based on that. So we're going to put that into the shop as a placeholder, and now you and your community can go over there and vote for it. And once enough people have voted for it, then we may pursue doing some artwork for it, and then also getting a sample made and so forth, right? So yeah, people could go over to the website right now and see that there's probably like 100. At last I counted, there were 60 already in the shop, but we're going to be adding another 40 that have continued to come in after that. But 100 different rare health issues, mental health issues, LGBT themes, you name it. So there's so many. And then if you look at our current lineup of samples that are being made, you may be referring to the Chiari malformation one. That's a health issue. It's a purple rabbit with a broken heart, or maybe grief loss. It's a blue rabbit with a purple heart, with a broken heart. Do you know which one?
I think it was the blue rabbit.
So grief loss is a theme that we're exploring with a rabbit that has a broken heart, and it also has an anchor, a little anchor fixed around its ankle, so that it appears as if it's being held back by the anchor of grief, right? And that's one that's really resonated with people. I quite like it myself, and there's some pictures I've put up over on my Instagram that highlight that one in a series of images where it's got like the shadow of grief lurking around behind it. It turned out really, really nice.
Okay. Now, one that I have seen you post up on X at least is the masking rabbit,
Right.
and
Yeah, masking. Yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say I think it's an interesting design.
Yeah, it is. And, with a lot of these things, we oftentimes, or at least myself, Jennifer is a lot more, well versed on all of these issues than I am. She's younger than I am. She's more in touch with these communities and more aware of a lot of the permutations and sort of variations on these themes. My understanding of a lot of the psychological or, even physical health issues is a little bit, I guess you'd say, old school. Like when I really started diving into psychology and the ramifications of childhood abuse, on adult psychology, that was all 20 years ago when I started working on the Alice games.
Oh, sure.
And back then, if you go back 20 years, 25 years from now, even like our basic understanding of autism, there wasn't the notion of autism spectrum disorder. It was quite common that you would hear people being referred to as having Asperger's, which is now a no-no. You're not supposed to call it Asperger's any longer. And, these are just minor examples of how the landscape changes, how the language changes, and how the understanding of the issues changes. And yeah, masking as a function of autism popped up as a request multiple times. But one of the interesting things that we've seen in the response to the posts is people saying, hey, not only autistic people engage in masking, which is very true. And in fact, one of the things that I've often thought when I see those responses is that everybody engages in masking to some degree, even if it's not a function of a psychological or health issue. It's just this notion that in certain circumstances you behave in a certain way or you present yourself in a certain way. Now, of course, I'm oversimplifying to make the case that it is not necessarily exclusive to anything, but that when we went to pursue the design for masking, it was at the request of many people who'd come from the ASD, the Autism Spectrum Disorder plush, and said, hey, we'd like a variation or a continuation on this theme. And so the response was specific to that request.
And oh, I found it here under the autism spectrum. Okay, I was actually looking for that, and it's a really interesting design, very colorful, but nothing too bright, which obviously that makes sense.
Yeah, the ASD rabbit, the Autism Spectrum Disorder rabbit, often is battling it out for first place in terms of sales between it and the anxiety rabbit. So anxiety has long been our number one bestseller. That's the orange rabbit with the little white mini buns.
Yeah.
And I think that, I often comment kind of jokingly that given the state of mental health, especially in the US, because that's where our primary market is, it's not surprising that you might say that that anxiety would be our number one bestseller. But yeah, autism spectrum disorder, and then the requests adjacent to that, like masking, that's often right up there at the very top. And the ASD rabbit is itself quite, I guess you'd say, kind of cute and colorful.
Oh, very much so.
And we often see comments, yeah, and we often see comments from people who are not a fan of the ASD rabbit saying, hey, this is sort of belittling, or it's sort of making us feel babyish or overly cute. And that's valid. That's fair, because, we can't make a design that addresses or appeals to 100% of the market 100% of the time, right? But again, the crowd design process that we go through, which I've mentioned a few times, we haven't really dug into it much, but what it does is it allows us to gather democratic feedback, right? We get a mass of voices, and then we analyze the comments, and the designs flow out from the comments. So if we see a lot of people steering a design towards a particular direction, we respond to that and the design changes. And of course, amongst that feedback, there's always going to be minority voices, a smaller group who are perhaps very vocal, but they still are in the minority who are saying, we don't like this design. We feel this is inappropriate or offensive, and the best we can do for them is say, look, the majority likes this, the majority wants this. And if you guys can gather enough voices on your side, we can make changes, and or in the future we may do a second variation, and you may be able to get that second or third variation on these themes to be more in line with your expectations. But yeah, the current version of the autism spectrum disorder rabbit and the masking rabbit, they do have quite a kind of cute, but it's a cute dark, right? It's a, underneath the mask of the masking rabbit, I think one of the biggest requests that they had was to not have it be smiling, not have it be happy. And so I think they were asking for that expression to be either more neutral or to be sad. And then that the masks are what they wear in order to present a happy face to the world.
Yeah, the face is solid. It's a very neutral face, which, given the situation, probably the right call.
Uh-oh. Looks like I might have lost you there.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, you said the design is solid and it's a very, and then I lost you.
Oh, it's a neutral face.
Ah, right.
Which,
the one under the mask, I think that there was some concern that it's not neutral enough. But again, this is one of those things we have to read through the comments. And
I could see someone saying that, but you have to remember it's you're presenting this in the form of a plush, so there's an inherent level of adorability that you're just not going to be able to bake out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading through the comments on the Instagram post now. It's been a while since I looked at these, but there's a lot of people just saying he's 100% perfect as is. Don't change it. So that we have to sort through this, and we do. We go through it, we analyze it, we talk about it on weekly phone calls, and then we respond to it. So it looks to me, just scrolling through the Instagram comments, which is not all of the comments, we always have to remind people that, because it may look like on one platform that the entire group on Instagram has agreed that this design sucks and it must change. But then if you go and look at TikTok, if you go and look at Instagram, if you go look at Facebook, if you go look at Reddit or the other places where we post these things up, you'll find that there is a whole nother mass of people who form a majority who like the design. And so, we have to keep that in mind.
Oh, sure. I mean, you can't please all your customers, but you do want to please as many as you can.
Exactly.
And, of course, with that, I will fall back to my own recommendation of I would sure like to see a bow tie instead of a tie-tie. But, hey, that's just me. That's just me.
That's a bow tie on the masking rabbit?
Yeah.
Or...
yeah, a classical bow tie.
Right.
Kind of like you got on the new White Rabbit, but nowhere near as big.
Right. Well, drop a comment across one of the platforms. And...
Already have, my man.
There you go.
Absolutely. So, I guess what I'm wondering is, what's the bridge? Like, how did you get from computer science well, I guess I know how you started this, but what got you to make that jump, I guess?
The jump to what? You got to finish what's on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah, I'm being a little too vague there. Sorry, my bad. So you're making video games, and did you just want to do something different?
You mean in terms of jumping to plushes? Is that the question?
I guess what I'm wanting to know is what got you out of games, firstly.
Ah, I see. Well, at the point where my wife and I started up Mysterious, which was this online shop that we run on top of Shopify, that was back in 2015, and that was in anticipation of the shutting down of Spicy Horse. So at that point in time, I was still at Spicy Horse. We'd been running that studio for 10 years. We'd put out 10 games, and frankly, I was really burnt out. I was ready to do anything other than games, but also just in general, I wanted to maybe take a break, because I had been working nonstop since I was 20 years old. And I I just thought, okay, maybe we'll go off sailing for a while, or maybe, I'll just take a break and go around China and vlog for a while. So if you look back at my YouTube and stuff at that time, I started vlogging and I started traveling a bit and I started talking about that. And like I said, my wife and I had started this online shop and we were selling little stuff. I would sell stuff from my travels. I'd go to Thailand for, sailing and I'd find weird little, sort of carved skull bracelets and stuff. And I would joke with my wife that like, look, we can buy this here on in the jungles of Thailand for, $2, but I can go and turn around and sell it on the Shopify shop for $30 and this will pay for our lunch. And that was working. It was kind of cute. It was like this online retailer stuff is pretty cool. And we started first with purses that my wife was designing and wallets, and those had a theme that was in line with the Alice games or with, in a sort of general gothy psychological themes,
Yeah.
And those were doing really well. Like we were, we had a couple $1,000s a month coming in additional income. And that's around the time where I also said, all right, I don't want to just sit on my laurels. We had shut down Spicy Horse. We did a Kickstarter for a card game and a book based on a bunch of fairy tales called Out of the Woods. So that was sort of the first big independent, venture that I undertook after Spicy Horse. But the online shop continued in the background and continued growing. And then at some point we were getting enough requests from people saying, where is another Alice game? That I thought, all right, well, we'll spin up a Patreon around trying to get another Alice game made. And that also coincided with this notion of, well, one of the first rewards we could send out to patrons is one of these stuffed toys. And that then turned into the plush business, right? So it was a multi-step process of sort of shutting down Spicy Horse, thinking I might like to take some time for myself, getting more into the world of online retail, and, thinking about what the future was going to look like just as this plush toy business just took off, just exploded. And so from there, my wife quit her job. She now works full-time at Mysterious. We've had 2 kids since all of that. And so we spend a lot of time at home with our kids and working on the business. And it has allowed us more freedom to spend time with our family and to travel. So yeah, it's sort of half planned, but a lot of it happened as it happened. We opened up a space to allow for that kind of stuff to happen and dreamt about it happening, but a lot of it we couldn't have planned for. 10 years ago, if you asked me that I could believe we'd be sitting on top of this, ever-growing toy brand empire, I would have thought that was a bit of a funny idea. Then again, if 20 years ago you told me I'd be living in China with 2 kids and a lovely wife and all this other great stuff going on in our lives, I would have thought you were crazy as well. So this kind of stuff sometimes just happens.
Life finds a way, right?
Yep, that's right.
There you go. So, well, I'll talk to Jen about this a little bit, but I'd actually like to get your take on this too. One of the biggest things, like the biggest gripe that I see consistently is the astrological symbols and alchemical symbols. And I get what that's about. That's just, tying something in with something that's appropriate to its nature. You're not doing anything. It's not even a cult for that matter. But a lot of... now, I haven't seen that lately. It's been a little less than a year since I really saw any of the designs get people riled up. But what's been your experience there?
Yeah, I mean, just so people understand what you're talking about, most of our toys, not all of them, but a lot of them incorporate symbols from alchemy, and alchemy being the precursor to modern day chemistry. So it was the attempt by people over the course of hundreds and thousands of years to catalog elements as they were discovered. Elements as in the periodic table, like a sulfur and a copper and an aluminum and all those types of things. And then on also processes, they basically had created a shorthand for the recipes that you would use in a lab, right? To boil something or to grind something or to combine this element with that element under these conditions. It's a shorthand for that type of stuff, and we incorporate that into the plushes as embroidered, stitching, those kinds of things. And it's a shorthand for us as well to say to people that, at the core of your fight response is a boiling over of emotions that causes you to fight instead of to flee. Well, on the chest of the fight response rabbit is the alchemical symbol for boil, to boil something, right? To boil over. And you go through, and many of them have these symbols on the chest. And so when people see these that are unaware of the why and the how of using the symbols, they might freak out and be like, "Oh, this is new agey, witchcrafty, Satanism, whatever."
Well, a really good example, I think, would honestly be the lupus rabbit, because just a quick glance at it, it's a little horrifying. But then, when you understand what you're looking at, what this is actually meant to communicate, it's actually kind of touching.
You'll have to
The lupus.
remind me what's on the chest of the lupus rabbit.
I don't.
Why?
I don't know the specific symbol. It's like a Y with a
I'm pulling it up now as we're
circle
talking
and
just to have a
line.
look at it. Yeah, so when you go to the page of every one of the plushes, we try to make do a good job of
antimony.
having a section. Huh?
Antimony. That's what it's a symbol for.
Antimony, yeah. Which also happens to be the same symbol that's used on the chest of the regression rabbit. So that is a psychological response in which you revert to an earlier sort of less adaptive behavioral style. Basically, you revert to childhood. So
Yeah.
regression, childhood regression in
Common
your
trauma response.
psychological state.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's a fairly common trauma response.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so antimony is also on the chest of that rabbit, and it's used to indicate being frozen or stuck to something. And so, yeah, you might find that across the rabbits, sometimes we reuse these symbols. I'm not sure you feel that symbol might look a little bit terrifying. Is that right?
Not even so much the symbol, but the whole design of the thing. You've got what looks like horns. You've got a disfigured face. It's a scary symbol in the chest. But
well, I mean,
it's not that. It's actually it's a butterfly, and it's a symbol for.
But they're not called Plushie Cutefuls. They're called Plushie Dreadfuls because they are dealing with relatively, not all of them, obviously,
Sure.
love. Well, I mean, one could sit and have a debate all day about whether or not love is a dreadful thing or not, right? Certainly, it can result in quite a dreadful situation if a loved one passes or you can't get to your loved one or whatever, right? But anyway, that is the notion behind the name, is that
Oh, I think I lost you for a
of
moment.
awareness that they should or that cause people difficulties. Yeah, our connection's a little bit funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm just saying that is that is why we're called Plushie Dreadfuls, because we do create things that I think other people might shy away from.
I mean, they can't. Everything in the world can't be cute. Although I will say, this migraine plushie, pretty adorable. That's a pretty cute, angry brain.
Well, yeah, and if people want cute from us, they should go look at the line of fruit-inspired plushes that we've made. I mean, all
they
of those
are adorable. Now, the latte.
But yeah, on the alchemy thing, we don't see it very often, but probably when we do see it, we tend to kind of blow it up a little bit because we think it's funny. And maybe it's not nice to laugh at the people who are having a freak out over it. But I just having grown up in Texas, I grew up around fundamentalist Christians, And I remember for many years, being told as a child all these horrifying stories of, where the world was headed, and that when I see people reacting in that highly emotional and sort of illogical fashion, oftentimes we try to engage with them rationally, but it rarely works. And so I think that I'll find that my response often turns to sarcasm and humor instead of trying to engage with them rationally.
Certainly. I mean, there's really that's in my own experience. I've found that rational dealing with incredibly irrational people just it often doesn't work. You have to your best bet's to break their line of thinking so that they can think outside of it. It seems so. Sometimes
Yeah, well,
sometimes it's just not easy. Sometimes it is.
sure.
But oh well, like the ADHD bat here. This is a great example. It is adorable and full of I don't know. I could see how a person would not think it's adorable at all, but I mean, this thing is too cute. It's just a little bat with a little chaos wheel and some little bee boys.
And this is one of those ones where, my instinct would have told me that perhaps this wouldn't sell that well, or that the community might even decide they feel offended by this. Like, it's funny that my instincts are often more towards a kind of caution, or a concern that someone might not want this product because of just the way it's designed and presented. And again, that's where I'll be proven wrong, because the community absolutely loves this design and they buy them. This thing is sold out multiple times,
Well, that's
and we've
awesome.
had to reorder it. And
It's a very fun
but
design.
it is a fun design, but it's not one that I would have initially thought would have resonated, and I would even have been hesitant to present it. And you can ask, Jen about that. Just yesterday, she had sent me a design for a rabbit based on the notion of being devastated, because we often see this
Hmm.
in online discourse, that people will reply to something that seems fairly mundane, that they are devastated by that event. And so Jennifer and I would often have these conversations and talk about this, that, the hyperbole that people exercise online in relation to sort of mundane events, if we could capture that. So she did this devastated rabbit, and I actually sat on the image for a few days worrying about posting it up, thinking that, well, are we going to get in trouble? Are people going to take this the wrong way? Well, I posted it up, and guess what happened? Everybody went nuts, and they absolutely love it.
That's great.
And that's testament to Jennifer's sense of, where the culture is at. She has a very good finger on the pulse of what people that are, in our audience might resonate with. And I mean, if you go and look at that right now, I just posted it up yesterday. It's already got 3,000 likes.
Yeah, I
To
see it here on
understand
X, and
how,
it's a
what's that?
I've got it up here on X. Yeah, it's a lovely little
Well,
design.
on my Instagram, it's got 3,000 likes. And to understand the scale of that, that a large portion of our fan base is made up of Alice fans. Well, when we posted up the first version of, I mean, I'm sorry, we posted up the pictures of the second version of the new Cheshire Cat.
Hmm.
That got 4,000 likes over the course of some days. Well, this
Oh
thing's
wow.
already got 3,000 likes in one day. So people love the effing devastated rabbit, and I never would have guessed.
Huh. Well, that's cool. Huh. Oh, that's just neat. Yeah, it's a cool design. I'll copy a link. I'll throw it in the show links below for anybody that's listening after the fact that'd like to check that out. And of course, yeah, obviously link to your profile here. I'll throw in all of them. I'll have to get that off you here in a minute. But beyond that, what's have you got a great plan for Plushie Dreadful, or is it just kind of a let's just enjoy what we're doing and make stuff that people are liking and see where it goes kind of thing?
It's both of those things. On the one hand, I have a fairly strong philosophy of not overworking people or not overstressing systems. Um, part of it is just because like I've got my family and my kids, and we have a certain desire for travel and for being able to spend time together. And so my expectation for myself and the amount of time I want to put into the business is to keep it reasonable and keep it humane, I guess you could say.
Sure.
But that was also the case back all the way through Spicy Horse. Like I instituted a absolutely mandatory, like we only work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and so you guys need to adjust your work style around that so we don't crunch and we don't do overtime and we don't work on the weekends, and that worked out really well. It was part of the company culture and it worked quite well. It's the same with Plushie Dreadfuls. We probably could go out, raise some VC money, super double down, everybody work overtime, hire tons of employees, and totally blow the brand up in a year and turn it into something massive. I have no doubt we could do that because even with there only being 6 of us, I think now we're 7. Only 7 of us working on it. We've still blown this thing up into something absolutely incredible. But I don't want to go that route where everybody has to start living a very stressful, high stakes version of existence. That being said, I think that the brand does have legs. We could go into media, right? There could be an animated series based on it. Certainly, in terms of the products we're presenting, we have brought on board a person whose job is purely focused on merchandise, like extensions, so doing bags and mouse pads and
Or like the bottle
umbrellas
opener
and
on your stage there.
yeah, exactly. So we are slowly treading into expanding the brand. And my expectation is that for the brand to really rocket off into the stratosphere, probably what has to happen is that a larger brand has to come and gobble us up. And then through the extension of what they bring, we would then be able to branch out and grow and become bigger and more well known. And that may be like an Amazon or a Disney or some sort of big media company that already has the capabilities to do all the extensions to the brand. And so we're just, I think what we're going to do is just sort of kind of continue to plod along doing the way we're doing, small family run business, until such time as one of those sorts of opportunities comes along. And if it makes sense, for us and for our customers, then we may pursue that. But I'd be perfectly happy to continue along as we're doing.
Well,
We've done great, so yeah.
I mean, seems like you've built a comfy little organization that's just making nice things. It's just it's kind of chill, kind of laid back. Is what it sounds like.
It is. But the world really hates stasis, right? That it's to find something that remains ultimately stable forever is very difficult. And you can think about a couple of the pressures that bother me from time to time. So just give you some examples is our business model is predicated on a direct to customer shipping method. We use e-packets to send from China to the rest of the world. And one of the reasons that works for us is that we can send something from Shanghai to New York City for less money than it might cost to send that thing from Los Angeles to New York City, right? And this is why in recent months you've seen the rise of these websites like Temu and Shine. They're leveraging that same pathway now. They figured that out. We figured it out years ago. So during COVID, while everybody's container ships were stuck and piling up in the ports, we were still shipping individual packages into the US no problem. So we weathered the COVID storm very well as a function of how we ship things. Well, now you've got these big guys that have moved in there, and they are now outselling Amazon in terms of total order numbers and the amount of stuff that they're shipping. Well, that's not good because it's now put that shipping method on the radar of US regulators. So we could wake up tomorrow and find that our whole business model has been blown up and destroyed by virtue of sanctions on that shipping method meant to control these really big players, but which trickle down and harm us as the little guy. And those kinds of things are what keep me awake at night, because it's like, it doesn't matter how great our brand is or how well-meaning we are, or how happy our customers are. At the end of the day, one of the major foundations of the business model is this direct to consumer shipping, direct from China, to all over the world. If that got blown up, it would be quite stressful. We'd have to restructure, and yeah, it wouldn't be a lot of fun. So, and there are things I worry about in terms of just trying to remain stable, because while we might try to remain stable, the world around us is constantly changing.
Too true. So, you had mentioned sailing. And as a matter of fact, I had wanted to put this off until you had finished vacation. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your sailing trip that you recently took?
Yeah, we've been sailing out here in the region. So for those that don't know, I live in Shanghai, China. I've been here for 20 years. And when I first came out, I came from the Bay Area. I was living in San Francisco. I was in LA for some years, and I went to Hong Kong for some years. And I've been sailing on and off in various forms in all those places. Even going back to when I was a kid in Texas, I'd go out to sailing little Hobie cats and stuff like that on the lakes there. But here, and so for the last more than a decade, we've had a boat over there in Thailand, and every winter we go off for sailing adventures. And so this last winter, people can go to my YouTube channel and see I put up personal sort of vlogs just to record our family moments. They put them up over there. So this last winter, yeah, we spent many months out sailing around the Andaman Sea with the kids on our boat, and they had a blast. And we're already making plans for this coming sailing season. I'll head over like October, get the boat ready, and then the wife and kids will be there for many months through the winter.
That does not sound like a bad way to spend your winters, if I'm being honest. Sounds
Well,
quite comfy.
winters in Shanghai are not my favorite. All the leaves fall off the trees. It becomes very black and gray and bleak, and it's cold and it's humid, and it makes me just want to run away because there's no sunshine. Also,
Mm.
the days get really short. So sailing during that period and being away from that is one way that I keep my sanity.
Oh, that's fair. That's certainly fair. So the hmm, what is what's your favorite current design in in amongst your mental health rabbits anyway? Because that seems to be that's kind of where most of my interest lies in the line.
The question is, which is my favorite of the mental health
Yeah.
plushes? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, the ones that we've produced recently that I really resonate with, it's the entire emotional response line. And so we did a fight and a flight and a freeze and a fawn rabbit. And amongst that group, you could also say that the regression rabbit is in there. And there's one more that fits in there. It's escaping me. But these all fall under the umbrella of complex PTSD, which, as I mentioned earlier, was not a notion that we understood very well, say 20 years ago. Everybody's understood PTSD as a result of, one or more encounters with chaos, with trauma. Oftentimes you'd see that referred to in cases where guys had gone off to war and seen their buddies blown up, and then they'd come back home with PTSD.
Oh yeah, the 1,000 yard
Complex,
stare.
yeah, exactly, which they used to refer to as shell shock and various things over the years. So the emotional response rabbits tie into the notion of complex PTSD, which can be oftentimes stemming from childhood trauma or abuse, and that might be a more long-term or extended exposure to dysfunction within your family, or the family not treating the children correctly, all the way into full-blown physical or psychological or sexual abuse. And that's what's referred to as complex PTSD. And then as a result of complex PTSD, kids form as adults into emotional dysregulation. In fact, more and more is being linked up to physical health outcomes as well. So, for example, cancers in adulthood being linked back to childhood or childhood physical, sexual, or psychological traumas. For example, if someone's going to develop, a woman is going to develop a cervical or other sort of reproductive organ cancer later in life. If you go back in her history, you may find that she suffered sexual abuse as a child. And so there's a psychological, physical connection between the incident of trauma and the physical medical outcome as an adult. And a lot of that's still being explored and talked about. And I'm not trying to say I'm a 100% advocate or even terribly knowledgeable on that. But I certainly have my own personal experiences with that. And I know people who do as well. And I know a lot of our customers do as well. So the emotional response rabbits to me are among some of the ones that are more important, I think, because what we see in the comments from people when we put these things up on TikTok and Instagram are people who are they're realizing that the rabbit represents an issue that they were unaware had a name, and yet they've been struggling with it for their entire lives. And that's a step towards them accepting it, being aware of it, and potentially working with it and transforming it into something that isn't as damaging or hurtful or harmful to them going forward. So that whole group of rabbits is one that I'm very interested in, and I'd like to expand the resources that are connected to them and the ability for those rabbits to raise awareness and help people.
Yeah, it's a nice little line. I looked it up here on your website. If anybody's watching right now, they can actually see them. But the the fawn, I think, and the fight response are the most truly inspired, like the most evocative, I should say. But then I guess a freeze response isn't supposed to be evocative. It's kind of a whoop kind of thing. So
But like one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that you could have a freeze response in life that, we think of a freeze response. It's like, oh, there's a dinosaur and, there's a T-Rex there and it's going to eat me, so don't move. And that's fine. I mean, that's the Hollywoodification of it. But the reality is that a freeze response can be something that you're carrying around and manifesting in your daily life without even realizing it. So I'll give you an example of it. It would be like, you're a normally functioning adult who goes to work and you're raising your kids, but the moment that and say you're a smart person, you know how to run a spreadsheet, you do your own accounting at home or whatever, but the moment that you get the request to do something related to the IRS and filling in your tax documents, you freeze and you procrastinate and you don't get it done and you beat yourself up about it and you feel tremendous amounts of stress. And you think to yourself, why am I so dumb and dysfunctional and broken? Why can't I just do these damn tax documents? Because they're not that hard to do, in fact. Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that they're manifesting a freeze response because as a child, they were abused or belittled or otherwise put upon by an adult authority figure. And so they developed freeze as a way of not raising attention or awareness around their being there so that they could avoid punishment. When you get a tax document, subconsciously your brain says, ooh, this is from an authority figure. This is from the government, And so you're subconsciously freaking out because this is coming from the man, right? And you don't realize that it's going all the way back to your childhood, why you're struggling to finish your tax documents. But there's a lot of examples in people's lives where they present an irrational response to particular situations that they themselves don't fully understand. Like, why do I behave this way in this particular situation? And it all goes back to that. It goes back to being irrationally angry in the face of an authority figure or freezing and procrastinating in the face of an authority figure. These are all related to this topic. And that's why I think it's important that people explore these things because, again, the first step to regulating these responses is even becoming aware that they are there.
absolutely, you can't address an issue if you don't know it exists, and that's
Yeah, that's
that's
big.
just the truth of it.
Well, it's a big theme behind this. A lot of times we hear people saying, well, why are you doing this? Aren't you just taking advantage of people with problems? And my response to that is that there are many people out there who don't even realize that they have the problem and that these are ways of opening the door and starting the conversations around these topics that are much needed instead of just saying, well, that person's just afraid to do their taxes or they're just discombobulated or whatever. Dig into the source of it. And again, the number of times that we've seen responses in the comments from people who are brought to awareness by the existence of these designs towards whatever it is that they're suffering and they've not been able to put a word to it, that right there is why we do it. And it's the exact same thing that I saw as a response to the Alice games. The Alice games were a subversion of people's ideas of what a game could do in terms of waking up to or tapping into a lot of this trauma that many people were struggling with. And these plushes do the exact same thing. To my mind, this is one of the better ways of using, creative media, product design, whatever, is a sort of Trojan horse that works its way into a culture or into an individual and unlocks their awareness of not just their problems, but their potential, the potential to heal, right? The potential to transform these things. And again, that goes back to why we use alchemy, because the toys themselves are a sort of discovery tool. They are like you're picking up the element of what it is that ails you. But then there's also supposed to be this notion that through the community or through the learning that's attached to the toy, through what you read about what we're doing online and the designs, what they're supposed to represent, you are able to then go out and find the tools for transformation to turn your trauma into something else.
That certainly sounds reasonable to me. And well, I guess what I might say there is that at a bare minimum, you're providing something for someone who might feel completely alone with this strange affliction, and just to see that there's someone out there that knows, and not only knows but can give you something that what would I say, that it feels right to you, like it feels like you feel, if you get what I'm saying there. It
And
evokes the same kind of feelings in its nature that you feel in your life.
yeah, well, I mean, for sure, making it so people understand that they're not alone in the things that they feel is a really important thing, because a lot of times when you do have an encounter with chaos, your reaction to it shocks you, right? The fact that you can be taken so low and that you can be so fully destroyed by something will often leave people thinking that they are especially weak or that they are especially flawed. They ask themselves why they can't just get up and walk it off like they see people in the media doing. The reality is that we all are very delicate in our being as human beings, and that one of the things that is lacking in popular media and culture and all these movies and everything that we see is compassion for the person who's suffering. And when they get hold of one of our products and they see how they're living through that experience is very normal, and also opens up to them the fact that there's a community where other people are also very normally suffering through those problems, that's a big help to people. They don't feel alone anymore. And feeling you're a part of something is, psychologically and physically, it's support, and it helps people to heal or transform better and faster.
Yeah, I mean, just as I'm looking through here, I see you've got just so many placeholders for upcoming designs amongst just specifically under the health afflictions, because I mean, realistically, there's so many things that can go wrong with any given person in in their mind, in their body, in their life, and that such a thing exists that you can kind of find solidarity with this, and then the other people that are in there with you. It's a little heartwarming, really. It's nice. So
Yeah, if people want to see what you're looking at, they go to plushiedreadfuls.com, and then under our the collections button, scroll down to the pre-crowd design consideration. This is a list of requests that we've seen, and we're trying to people who are involved in this process, be aware that there's 61 designs in there right now, but we're sitting on top of another 40 or 50 that have come in since this was initially posted up, and it's a time-consuming thing to get them all into the shop, and so we're trying to sort through the additional list of requests that have come through. But the idea here is that if there is a rabbit design that you want to see for yourself, your community, you would post the request up in the comments on our social media. Hopefully, eventually, we will see that comment, and then it'll make its way into the shop in this format. And then when it's in the shop, people of that community who want to see it made, they need to go and click on that design, and then there's a button to sign up to be notified. And we're using that notify me when this is available sign up to show us the level of interest. And once we get a certain number of signups, and it needs to be in the hundreds, but once we get several hundred signups on a particular design, then we know that there's enough interest out there to validate going forward through crowd design. And I hope people understand, like, the current model has been successful for us as a business, but we still run we still sort of run at a loss on a lot of the rare disease designs. As I mentioned before, we're required by the factories that we work with to manufacture in batches of 1,000. So we may have a rare disease design that, a relatively small handful of people have lobbied for and requested, that when we finally put it into the shop, it might only sell 20 units in the first month. And, it doesn't recoup what we've invested in it in terms of art and production and manufacturing costs and everything else. And so what happens is that the best sellers in our shop, the Anxiety Rabbit and things like that, they end up sort of supporting the existence of all these other lesser or rarer issue rabbits. But we've got to kind of modify that a little bit. It's not just a financial thing. It's like we're literally running out of space in our warehouse to put
it doesn't
all
seem
of these
entirely
designs,
feasible.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where we're sort of trying to modify the process here, where, okay, you've got a request. Everybody's got a request for something they'd like to see made, but we have to see enough people sign up for it to justify it. Again, not just in financial terms, but like in literal physical space terms. It takes
1,000 bunnies is not one box,
rabbit.
man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I will say, though, I am really, really digging the Megalomaniac Fox. Very stylish.
Yeah, he's got a funny story. He really had a difficult time coming into existence because we were getting variations on the samples, and both the crowd and then also our internal team were uncertain how much they liked or disliked it. And meanwhile, people were signing up for it. And now I think there's over 1,000 people that signed up waiting in line for it. It's finally getting made into a real thing. And yeah, it's pretty cute. But it's funny to me because a megalomaniac is only a few degrees separated on the spectrum from a narcissistic personality disorder person. And we have an NPD rabbit in the shop. Now, I think from a design perspective, as a thing you might decorate your home with, it's probably one of the cuter, sort of more visually pleasing of all the designs we have, the NPD rabbit. But it hasn't sold because, of course, nobody wants to resonate with an NPD, design. Like,
yes,
so
I'm totally narcissistic. Look at me. Yeah, that's not the most common of things.
It's just been a little bit interesting to me to see that there's this very positive reaction to a megalomaniac, whereas there's been a fairly muted or negative reaction to the NPD design. And
That
I'm not
said,
sure what's going on there, but maybe when we put the fox in the shop, it doesn't actually sell. It's hard to say.
well, I will say I think it's an inspired design, and
Yeah, it's a very
I
cute
hope it
design.
does well. I sincerely do. It's pretty cool little piece. That said, I'll share that little rabbit link around because I noticed you've got a pretty good price on them. And I've
Sounds good. Hey, so I just want to give you the heads up that I should be trying to
oh yeah,
um
I'm
this off pretty soon. I only had
totally
about an
aware.
hour blocked out today.
So
So if we want to do like another 10 minutes or so to wrap up, that's cool.
sure,
And if
sure.
there's more and your audience wants to hear more later on, I'd be happy to come back and do again in the future.
Well, well, for one, that sounds great, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. But I guess the thing to ask is, what's the next big thing? What's the next new thing for Plushie Dreadfuls? Or is
In
it
terms
just
of a product or
be it a product, be it a project, maybe media? Like, what should we be looking out for from you?
I think we are going to try to explore media a little bit. I also think that in the coming months, we're going to try to get, and when I say media, by the way, I mean we are going to try to explore maybe trying to get an animated TV show or something like that, at least concept it out, right? But then I also think that in the coming months, our expectation is that we're going to try to do a bit more PR that gets the brand more on the radar of the traditional media in the US. And so I think
That's reasonable.
people can keep an eye out for that. But look, in terms of just the overall brand and the strategy for going forward, it's pretty simple. We're going to continue listening to people's requests, and we're going to continue working through crowd design to make plushes for people. Um, and at the same time, we're going to expand on the little ancillaries that go around the products. For example, one thing that we're pretty excited about is designing lots and lots of little tchotchkes, little props that the plushes can wear
Yeah, like the
as
masks, for
bracelets.
instance.
Yeah, like that. But imagine something like a little cell phone that they can wear on their wrist, or
Oh yeah, yeah,
a little.
okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna try to put together a list of lots of sort of everyday items that you can personalize your existing rabbits with, and put those in the shop. So that's probably a pretty big addition. Like if you've already got a bunch of rabbits and you're not really planning on buying any new ones, but now you can buy little accessories for them. That's something that'll be coming soon.
Absolutely. Or you can buy a barefisted bear for your barefisted bear.
There you go.
Absolutely. Shout out to our friend Jen. That's a fun design too, and that too. I really appreciate that such a thing exists as Plushie Dreadfuls. That you can have fun designs. That you can have maybe a creepy design here or there. But at the end of the day, it's all pleasant. Really, there's nothing awful here. I mean, there's nothing off-putting. It just might be, well, I guess unless you're some kind of fundy, but there's no helping some folks. But realistically, I would love to see Plushy Dreadful be the Todd McFarlane of soft things. That'd be real cool, man. That'd be real cool.
That'd be great. Well, I was once quoted many years ago of saying that I wanted to be sort of like the next Walt Disney, only a little darker. And there have been points in my life where I thought, well, that dream is sort of out of reach now. It's funny that these plushes are becoming so popular globally, even that I actually think there's some hope that we could end up back in that position of the plushes turning into a very successful brand that branches out into all the Disney-esque type of things, the theme park rides and the movies and you name it. So it may still give me a bit of a chance at achieving that goal, at least on a small scale.
Absolutely. Hey, fingers crossed for Plushy Dreadful Land. That'll be a cool
Yeah,
place for
thanks.
all the
Well,
kids to visit.
main thing is the main thing is it's really it comes back to the crowd, right? We you
Sure.
can refer to them as the fans or our audience or our customers or the crowd, whatever. But I think that one of the things that we're doing right is that we're letting them run this in a big way. We really do listen to them. We use the feedback. Look, I tell this to our internal team all the time. They come to me and they go, "Hey, what do you think about this versus this for a product design?" And I go, "I don't know. Don't ask me. Give me the photos or the art or whatever, and we'll post it online and we see what the crowd says." And there's something a little bit liberating about that, but there's also something a little bit scary about it. It's hard, I think, for creatives. It's hard for creatives to admit that maybe they need to step aside and let the audience decide. And it's funny because in today's world we see so many examples of media properties that people feel like are being steered in a wrong direction, and where you see people standing up and saying, "Hey, why won't you listen to us, the fans? We're the ones who want to consume this stuff. We're the ones that are going to ultimately go and buy it. Listen to us." And you'll see that whether it's game companies or film companies or whatever, the marketing departments and the creatives there always kind of wag the finger and we know better than you. So I think that in that era, it's, I think, a good thing for us that we're going the exact opposite direction. We're saying that, yeah, we're the creatives and yeah, we're running the business over here, but you guys, the fans, you're deciding the ultimate direction of all this. And so when you ask me, what's next for us, a big part of the response to that question is, what's next for our audience? What do they want next? And I'm just as interested to see the outcome of that as you might be. And I'm also just as much in the dark over it, and gladly and happily so. I mean, I think that the audience, they are doing a great job of helping us guide this thing to wherever it's ultimately going.
Well, I'll say this. I think that you've proven a good steward of a great idea. And I can't wait to see where you take it. And I guess
Great.
with that,
Well,
we should probably let you get out of here. I'm sure you've got a day full of important things to do. So thank you again for coming by. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah. My kids are waiting. They want to go play in a local nearby new old town, as my wife refers to it. And so we've got a day of playing outside in the sun ahead of us. So I appreciate you having me on. And again, yeah, if in the future you've got a follow-up for this, I'm happy to join in on that.
Well, that sounds great. You and the kids have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that you've got nowhere but up to go.
Thanks so much. Talk to you later.
You too. Be good, man. Nice talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And that's that. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. That was American McGee of Plushie Dreadful, and, of course, Alice, the video game fame. That would also be, what was the company? Spicy Horse. That was who was done through there. And, of course, you'll remember we've had Jen Dahl on a couple times, and always a good time. So, yeah, not exactly the normal fare, but the interviews are never the normal fare. So, thanks for tuning in. It has been a pleasure, and I'll see you again soon.